Welcome to Brandstorm, the podcast that talks to the people behind America's brands. I'm Dan Trzynski, president of Platypus Advertising and Design.
And I'm Nancy Christopher, PR director at Platypus. Online newsrooms are becoming very popular thanks to companies like TekGroup International. It's an internet software and services firm that helps PR and corporate communications professionals save time and money, providing a platform to help increase coverage in the mainstream and social media. Companies like Starbucks, Toyota, Dunkin' Donuts, Walgreens, and many others are using these newsrooms to centralize all of their communications content. So joining us today to talk about online newsrooms and why companies should be considering using them is the owner and founder of TekGroup, Steve Momorella. Welcome to Brandstorm, Steve.
Hey, Steve.
Hi, how are you doing? Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Did I pronounce your name right, I hope?
Yes, I was wondering if you were going to get it, but yes, that's correct.
Oh, good. So why don't we start by you telling us a little bit more about TekGroup and the services that you offer?
Sure. TekGroup International, as you mentioned in the opening, we really focus on one thing, and that's something that's called an online newsroom. Believe it or not, we started the company in 1998. So we've been developing online newsrooms for clients now for just over 21 years.
Wow, it seems new to me.
I think what's happened is the focus and really the importance of a newsroom has changed a lot, especially in the past 5 to 10 years. Initially, we were really focused on journalists and what was called kind of a press room, where you would put your press releases and your press kits. You would kind of mix using the wire services with your website. Really, that's all changed now. All of our clients, really over the past 5 to 10 years, their focus is their audience. Certainly, they like to have news available for journalists, but with the decrease of newspapers and the decrease of journalists and the increase of social media, what our clients are really creating now is this kind of online newsroom for all of their news content. They're targeting their audience. They're targeting potential customers, existing customers, potential employees. It's really been a game changer with social media and with our ability to add distribution directly into the newsroom. So a lot of companies are not having to use a wire service anymore and saving a lot of money by going to a newsroom.
In the past, we had a press room that typically had like news releases
press releases.
Any news stories. It had a logo maybe of your company, and it maybe had a headshot of some of your key personnel. What kind of content can you find in a newsroom now?
It's really changed. There's certainly going to be what we call your press assets, press releases, press kits, things like that. But it's really changed to more of stories and kind of featured content or video content or image content that tells a story about your brand or about your products or about people using it. And so the content is more rich. It's more of a blog post kind of a feel. It's not necessarily being targeted towards journalists. It's not necessarily being written by PR people. One of our clients, Lenovo, for example, they have their R&D people and their IT team all contributing content to the newsroom, telling stories about what they're doing, talking about their research. So it's really changed from press focus, press release to more of just stories and content, video and image content that's available for sharing, for people clicking and passing it along via Facebook or via Twitter or something to their associates.
Is it more about a writing style, or is there software that's different in a newsroom that helps push that content out then?
I think it's a little bit of both. The second one first, our platform allows you very easily to post a piece of content, target an audience, and press a couple buttons and it gets out. And so that's really changed as well. In the past, it used to be a team of PR people sitting around picking photos, writing a press release, paying the wire services to distribute it. Then they'd have to upload their photos to their website and then maybe upload a press release via email and attachment. So there were all these different things going on. With our platform, you log into your dashboard as a PR person and you click a couple buttons and you've distributed content out to a wide audience.
Do you have to know the journalist, their contact information? When you have different news releases, you target different journalists. So are you able to find those journalists off that dashboard, or is that something you still have to do your homework with?
No, it's all integrated. So there's various things that we do. One is we have a database of journalists that are segmented by target or by industry. So, for example, if you're Prudential and you want to target financial service reporters or investment journalists. It's all in there already. So when you upload your news release, you tag it, you press which people you want to send it to, and then it sends it. So it's kind of like a wire service in that regard, where you don't have to go out and necessarily find each journalist. It's all kind of in there. Additionally, what we're really finding is that journalists are signing up. So if you go to the Motorola newsroom and you're a technology journalist, there's a button there that says click here to register for email alerts or to subscribe for email. And so a lot of times the journalists are actually being proactive and coming to the various sites that they cover, the various companies that they cover. And so they're getting real time information by kind of subscribing.
Does that just go to their inbox, or is there a feed reader or something like that on their end?
Sure, there's both. It'll automatically send them an email, and it'll also put it out into an RSS feed that they can subscribe to. With our platform also, we have something that's called Story Stream, and we've built this up over really about the last 10 years. And it's basically targeted journalists on Twitter. So we have a Twitter following of just over 300,000 journalists that are following us in various industries, whether it's environment or healthcare or science or automotive. And so when a client issues a news story, it goes out to their email list, it goes out to the journalists, it goes out to their social media accounts, it goes out to our social media accounts. So you get this kind of wide spread of a push of your content with the hopes of people sharing it, people picking it up and writing stories about it.
Steve, does the online newsroom, is that software that stands by itself, or can you integrate it with your own website?
Technically, it's a completely standalone site, but visually and kind of from an SEO perspective and from a user perspective, it's integrated. So if you went to prudential.com, you would see it, and then you would click on newsroom. You'd be taken to the newsroom, but you really don't know. You really can't tell. But technically, from a technical perspective, we're completely separate, and that's one of our big selling points is that we become your IT department. So a lot of our clients complain that their IT department doesn't pay enough attention to them and their needs. And so we kind of host the site, manage the site 24/7.
But so from an analytics standpoint, you're not seeing that on your own Google Analytics, then you have some type of reporting as to, because if you're going to a third-party site, how are you tracking?
It's really both. It's both. We have an embedded analytics system, but
Okay.
since we're using your corporate structure, your URL structure, you can also, if you have Google Analytics or Omniture or any of those packages, you can absolutely track the newsroom as you would if it was on your own. So
Okay.
it's really integrated nicely from a
SEO standpoint.
SEO standpoint, domain name. A lot of times you'll see, pick a company, Walmart, they might have a Business Wire hosted site or a PR Newswire. So when someone actually clicks on the press release, it's PR Newswire or Business Wire or something like that. Whereas with ours, it's going to be news.walmart.com or news.walgreens.com or whatever the site is. So you get full SEO value and credit.
So you help with the IT. What about strategy? Do you help companies when they come on board with your software kind of determine what kind of story approach or theme they should be doing for their newsroom?
No, that's a great question. We work a lot with agencies. We partner kind of on that upfront piece, that discovery side. We partner with agencies sometimes, or we work directly with the team. A lot of it, though, we do put back on the client in terms of, what's your voice? What we can't tell you what your voice should be. What do you want to say? Where we do help a lot is on the technical side. So do you have a lot of videos? How can we get those videos into the newsroom? Do you have databases of images all over the internet? How can we get all those into your newsroom so now you just have them all in one place? So we can work to kind of help structure what we call the information architecture, or what becomes the navigation of the site. We can help with that. But ultimately, the client has an idea before they're tired of what they have. They want to go somewhere new. And so we just kind of go along for that ride and help where we can.
You said up top that you're targeting a lot more, or companies are targeting the consumer themselves, or taking their news direct to the consumer. Can you give us a feeling for how much of it is being consumed by consumers versus reporters and actual journalists that are looking to just get the information, pick up and write their own story?
Sure, absolutely. We can track a lot of that, and we do. And the change is really phenomenal. If you look back to 1998, it was 100% journalists and zero consumers. And now a lot of our bigger clients and more our smaller clients, it's probably 70% consumer and 30% journalists.
Wow.
Not only on the traffic, but also on the content. So if you look at someone like Abbott Labs or Lenovo, I mentioned before, if you go to their newsroom, the headlines of their content, it just doesn't read like a press release. It reads about a story that they're trying to tell. So you can just tell they're focusing on the consumer as well. So it's kind of both ends. And that's not to say that you're not going to have your industry news and your financial reports and all of that stuff that you have to have from a PR perspective. It's just we've really seen a big increase towards that kind of consumer focused. A lot of people call it a brand journalism newsroom or a brand newsroom, where these companies are actually writing the stories themselves. They're not feeling the need to spend money on the wire, solicit a journalist to write a story. They're just writing it themselves.
Is that giving PR writers angst that they have to adapt a new style and be more of a feature writer?
No, I think it makes it a lot more fun.
factual?
I mean,
I know from your
we've done
standpoint.
that for our clients, Elements Massage, Fitness
Right.
Together. We've written stories for them as well, but they didn't have this kind of very sophisticated online newsroom that you're describing. So can you give us some examples of what different companies are doing? Because I've seen some very clever newsrooms.
Sure. I mean, there's a lot. The one that I always point to the most that we've never had anything to do with, and it's not our client in any way, is Coca-Cola. They were really one of the first companies to come out and say, we're not using the wire service anymore. We're not spending hundreds of thousands of dollars every single year on a wire. And so they came out with this brand journalism Coca-Cola newsroom, and it's been awesome. The stats that they provide, the increase in traffic, the increase in viewership, the increase in shareability, all of it is really a good case study. From our perspective, in terms of some of our clients, we have a wide range. So people in the automotive industry, people in the healthcare industry, they're really starting to buy into this idea that they can own their own news and that they can kind of create a little department that is almost like a little newspaper for their company. There's a lot of great examples. I mentioned to Lenovo, I keep talking about because we just recently launched their site. Abbott Labs is AbbVie. Lenovo's is called the Story House or the Story Room. They don't even call it a newsroom. They call it Our Stories or something. So they've even gone further. Another one that I like to talk about in our healthcare industry is a company you might not have heard of. They're called Brookdale and Senior Living. 3 or 4 years ago, they were putting out press releases and trying to target journalists. And now their stories are all just targeting their clients. They're almost using it as marketing in a way to tell stories to people that might buy their service.
These are your clients using your platform?
Brookdale is.
Okay.
Everyone that I've mentioned, I think, is using ours except Coca-Cola.
Okay.
And on our website, we list a lot of our clients. Another great one that we really haven't talked about is people using a newsroom for CSR, for corporate social responsibility. Sprint is a great example. They have a newsroom, but then they also have something that's called Good Works. And that's a newsroom that's focused purely on CSR and the environment. So they've actually taken the idea of an online newsroom with all of its distribution power and all of its content management power, and they've really just kind of created a microsite or a targeted CSR site that is really very targeted to just telling people what they're doing with the environment and kind of the community.
And that's kind of the same thing you're doing with investor relations as well, right?
Right. It's the same idea. Our philosophy really is that you should have one newsroom, and then inside of your newsroom, you might have an investor relations section. However, that said, a lot of people are just creating investor relation newsrooms or IR sites where you're not going to get the blogs. You're not really going to get the social media. You're just going to get financials, numbers, earnings, everything that quote investor would want.
Your opinion here, I'm sure you're going to feel the same way I do, though. Cautionary about being too salesy on in your newsrooms. It shouldn't be just a blatant sales pitch of what you do, correct?
Right. It's absolutely not. It's the way that the people are talking about it today. It's changed. It's changed so much over the past 20 years, but it's really kind of stories. That's what everyone is talking about. We have a new product coming out, and of course, we're going to put out a press release, and of course, we're going to have a press kit. But how can we write some stories about how people are using the product or what it went into making the product? It's not salesy. It's just a story, but
it gets the sales points across.
Sure. On the newsroom, you're not really going to have a lot of sales flyers that you can download and stuff like that. It's going to be more technical documents and things of that nature. So
stop at print this coupon for 20% off.
Right, right.
So, what can you do to make your newsroom more social? And why is it so important to have it connected to all of your platforms?
For me, it's about saving time. As I mentioned, we started this 20 years ago, so when there was no social. And so as this started becoming popular, we started seeing people that would put out a press release on the wire, then they would go and log into Facebook, and then they would type a Facebook post, and then they would log into Twitter. And so they were kind of doing all these different things. And so with our platform, you just kind of integrate your social accounts into the newsroom, and then you can pick and choose very easily what you want to post or schedule. So that I think is important from a time saver. And also, I think from getting the same message out. You want to kind of tailor a message for each platform. And so our software allows you to kind of create the tweet that you want to send, but you might want to use the same image across Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. So it kind of helps you automate some pieces and also just make sure that your message is consistent.
Is social a key driver to get the message out to the consumer? I get how you can get it out to the press and them signing out and they self-identify. But if you're Lenovo and you're going to sell computers directly to the public, is it behavioral targeting? Is there some other targeting engine in your platform that gets the news to those people?
Right. The targeting side of it is going to be a journalist by industry or anyone that's followed our particular Twitter accounts or Facebook accounts by industry. It doesn't have to be a journalist. You could just be a person who's interested in technology and you might see it that way. Also, our clients will retweet their newsroom content across their corporate platform. So it gets a lot of visibility that way. Email is also a big one with us where as people are signing up, they're able to say, okay, here's my email address. I'm only interested in photos, or I'm only interested in investor relations content, or I'm only interested in this product. So there is some kind of targeting in that way to make sure that you're reaching the right people with the right message.
But that's not consumer targeting. Is there any kind of consumer targeting engine is what I'm wondering.
No,
Okay.
there's nothing built in. It's just
Okay.
if you sign up as a consumer, you could say what you're interested in. But our database, if you will, is journalists.
Oh, so social is still the best way of getting out direct to consumer messaging.
I think so, unless a lot of our clients might have some email databases of consumers that they'll share their news with as well.
Okay.
So sometimes with our platform, you can import a list. So a lot of our clients will import staff or employees or perhaps
Customer registration lists, anything like that.
Yes.
So, what about
yes.
podcasts? How do you distribute the podcast? How do you show them on your newsroom? Is there a visual way that you help attract people to podcasts? Or are people even putting podcasts on the newsroom?
People do. I don't know about podcasts, but we have an audio platform. So one of the pieces of content that has its own dashboard is audio. A lot of times it's going to be press conferences or investor relations, earnings calls. It'll also be some things at trade shows. Like if there's a speaker somewhere, they'll pop up a 30-minute speech or a keynote or something like that. If a client did have podcasts, certainly it would be treated the same way. They just create a section called podcast. They can upload the content, target it. They can email it out through the email platform. So any type of content that really one can think of, infographics, PDF files, whatever it may be, can be put into the system.
Okay, so here's the big question. How expensive is a newsroom? I mean, is it within a small company's range? Because we've heard all the big guys have it. What about some of the smaller companies?
Sure. We have two platforms, two kind of ranges. One is our professional package and one is enterprise. So obviously a company that has a lot of PR people scattered around the world, international, foreign languages, can be expensive. For the smaller companies, it isn't that expensive just because the amount of content that a smaller company is pushing out, the amount of administrators that are working on it, the amount of seats is not generally large. I think a good number that I always throw out there for small companies, we do an annual license, which I think most people are comfortable with these days, and it's usually about $10,000 per year. So what we try to tell people is for less than $1,000 a month, you can save money on the wire. You can save money on sending out emails via a contact database company. So there's lots of ways to save money. And also you get a fully hosted website, content management system. So there's a lot that comes with the package for what we try to say is less than $1,000 a month.
Is that a per seat cost?
Not for us. Some of the other companies and software companies do that, but we just look at it and say, okay, this is a small to medium sized company. They're not going to all of a sudden have 100 seats. So we can kind of bracket them and we just do unlimited. So we don't charge by the seat.
Okay.
We don't charge by the number of words or press releases. So we kind of do a all you can use concept for that annual license.
So a firm like ours, where we are a PR agency, we could work with a client and co-work the same newsroom. So we're advising them, working with them. It's their newsroom. It lives on their site, but we can contribute and help them run it. Is that correct?
Right. And that is absolutely correct. We have a lot of relationships with agencies, and really the revenue stream for the agency, there's a couple, because there's that upfront, that what we call discovery.
Sure.
So typically if we partner with an agency, that's kind of built into our setup. So whatever you would charge for that is your revenue stream. And then also the ongoing. So each month they're going to want new content, new ideas for content. And so what that provides an additional, either a retainer or monthly fee for
Sure.
the agency. And so we have some good relationships with agencies where we're both doing separate things, but we work together to provide a great solution for the client.
And you've done a lot of surveys, Steve, with social media and the journalists to know that this really is something that people want, and especially journalists are looking for.
Absolutely. That's really what all of our research and development, all of the features that are in our platform, all come from our surveys and our research. We research for the past 15 years. We ask journalists really all the time, a couple times a year with a big survey, but also smaller surveys throughout the year. And we ask them, what do they want to see in a newsroom? How important is it to have different content items? And it's just been inspiring to see over the years how it's changed. In the beginning, no journalist wanted anything on Twitter. It was 10%, and then it went to 30%, and then now it's 80 or 90%. So you start to see the trends of what journalists want in a newsroom. And then we also ask consumers. We do a social news survey asking consumers, would you follow Starbucks Twitter feed to get news, yes or no? Or how likely are you to follow an automotive company's Facebook channel for news? So we ask these kind of direct questions, and the numbers just keep going up and up to now it's obviously just kind of everywhere.
And I just love how easy it makes it to really centralize all your communications. If I'm a reporter, gosh, I go to the newsroom and I can just get about all the background I need in one place. So it's very cool.
That's the idea, that centralized hub, whether it's investor relations information, whether it's press releases, it might be a photo gallery from a product 2 years ago. It might be a video of something. It could be anything. It's not just press releases.
So what's the best way to contact you, Steve?
I'm available via email at steve@tekgroup.com. And then obviously my phone number, I think, will be available on the podcast. I'm also on Twitter, just my last name. It's @Mamarella. Also, we have a couple other Twitter channels with TekGroup and Online Newsroom. So the easiest is probably email or phone.
Okay.
Yeah, this is really interesting. I love this idea.
I do too.
Yeah, I'm anxious to go look at some of those other sites. So anybody else you want to plug that's a customer? I don't want to put you on the spot, but give me 3 more of your top 10.
If I had to choose in the retail area, especially, a lot of people like REI, which is a kind of a retail outdoor company. So the REI Newsroom, I think, is a great one. We recently launched, also in that same vein, one for Arc'teryx and Merrill. So within the last 6 months, we've launched 3 kind of outdoor retail type companies. Those are all great. Also, I would say Sprint is another good example of, they have a newsroom, and then they also have that kind of CSR, which is kind of 2 newsrooms in one. But my favorite, if I had to choose one favorite for anyone to go see, it would be Vail Resorts, which I think it's just news.vailresorts.com.
Yeah, we have a lot of tourism listeners, so that's awesome.
And boy, do I love Vail.
Right.
Yeah, their newsroom is actually, it's 15 newsrooms in one. They have a separate newsroom for each of their resort properties and mountains and everything, and then it's all wrapped up into one. So it's just a ton of content.
Wow. All right. Well, thanks again, Steve. And for those listening, if you have any questions for Dan or me about today's episode, feel free to contact us on our LinkedIn pages. And if you like what you've heard today, please don't forget to share, review, and subscribe to Brandstorm. We appreciate your support.
This is Dan Trzynski, along with Nancy Christopher at Platypus Advertising and Design, an awesome company that creates perceptions that influence choice. We hope you'll join us next week for another episode of Brandstorm.